Still saying it's still showing over coffee though. Oh, there it is. Okay, yeah,
There we go.
it's on the web. It
Yeah.
just took a little bit of time. All right, everybody. Thank you so much, anyone who's joining us. This is John with Long Island Tabletop and Legendary Realms Games for We Built This City, a bi-weekly world building show. Tonight, I'm joined by a few special guests. I have Mike and Kevin. Mike also was one of the volunteers for Long Island Tabletop. And Kevin, were you one of the players, or did you run any games during the convention? Kevin, can you hear me?
Yeah, I unplugged my headphone.
Oh, so,
Oh.
sorry.
Yeah, my
Um,
bad.
no, I was just trying to do a little intro. If you want to just maybe give a little intro for yourself.
Don't. Hi, my name's Kevin. That's really about it. I mean, I've been DMing for a little bit now, a couple of years. That's about it.
Yeah, that's fine. And Mike, I know you've been a player for the most part with Long Island Tabletop and Legendary Realms, but you actually DM'd for the first time just within like the last 2 weeks, right, for Long Island Tabletop?
That is correct.
Awesome. So, for those of you who might be joining us for the first time, welcome. The general idea of We Built the City is a world building show where we kind of come across a core topic and then try to flesh it out with some other side ideas, kind of pitch a few things together. This week's topic is legends and lore, and I'm going to find out what we're going to pair off of that. Legends and lore could be anything from heroes, villains, deities, destinies, curses, and relics. We're trying to get an idea of the general history, fact, fiction, cultural importance, things like that. We are going to try to approach this week's episode from more of a beginner's standpoint of like, let's say, coming up with your first campaign or developing things for the first time, just because coming right off of last week's online expo, I think it's a good place to start with. So let's first determine what the side topics are going to be, or at least what's going to connect to legends and lore. I've got a 1 in 3, which would be NPCs or NPC. So it's a master, minion, mercenary, merchant, monarch, mystery, just to kind of toss a few ideas out there. And buildings and structures, which could be shops, hotels, restaurants, temples, castles, things along the like. So, all right. So we have legends and lore, and we have a NPC to work with, and we also have a building or structure to kind of go off of. I mean, there's a couple of easy places to go, especially if you're developing a campaign or trying to come with some ideas for the first time. I mean, some of the easiest places that I could think of would be to just go straight off and until let's say like a temple. You know, it's relatively straightforward. You could definitely have a priest or somebody there who's in service of the legend. You could also have a library, a place of study, somewhere where there's information about said legend or lore. But also it could be if we're talking about legends and lores in the sense of like a relic or like an artifact or a treasure or something like that. It could be a vault. It could be a vault somewhere where it is meant to be protected and guarded, and it is supported by an NPC. Could be a something along the lines of like the Knights Templar, like a group or a faction that's dedicated to protecting it, or it could be treasure hunters, people who are actively trying to get their hands on it, so they're looking for the location of this. The thing I forgot to roll is on the helpful versus hindrance scale, so let's see where we fall. So that is a 9. Being more on the higher end, that means it is very helpful. So we're talking about something that has, it's doesn't necessarily need to be good. Like if we're talking about it on the scale of like alignment or things like that, it doesn't necessarily require that it's a holy object or something of good purpose. Just something that if the party were to seek it out, would be very beneficial.
Hmm.
I'm thinking like like the Ark of the Covenant or the Holy Grail, or even just a powerful weapon, um, that just is desirable by many parties. So, Kevin, I know that you mentioned that some of your friends are looking to get into DMing for the first time or
Yeah, I've had a
wargaming and
couple.
whatnot. So how about why don't I come up with an idea and then let's see what you think, and Mike, you can chime in as well.
Mhm.
So if if I'm trying to develop a campaign, or let's say I just want to develop like a session, let's even just say like a one shot. I
Mhm.
think something like this is perfect because it's an excuse to get the party to go somewhere. It gives a destination or a purpose. It could spill over into something much more significant. So, in terms of legends or lore, it depends, I guess, on how tangible we want to make the thing. Whether it's something that they actively are seeking out, or something that is just that they're aware of, or even that they may be hired to protect. The building and structure, again, could be the place where it's housed, or it even could be somewhere where there's knowledge of it. It could be, you are looking for this thing, or you're looking for this person, or something like that. So as a result, you are trying to get as much research as possible and traveling somewhere that has knowledge of this thing.
Mhm.
Let's say, for example, what if they are searching for, let's go really interesting. Let's say if it's legends and lore, why don't we go with something like a ancient mechanical device or something like that? I'm thinking more
Sure.
like fantasy or steampunk or something like that.
Sure. Sure.
What if it's
Sure.
like a
Okay.
flying machine? Like what if it's a flying machine? So as a result, what they're doing is they're looking for information on where this thing was, who built it, things like that. So maybe there's an old like gnome workshop, like a factory, and a bunch of the people who built the thing are still around, or if not, the information's kind of passed from person to person.
From like a
So,
mentor to a mentee and
yeah,
down. Yeah,
could be something
kind of
like
like that.
that.
Yeah. Yeah, we could.
I really like that idea because a lot of the times in the campaigns I run, I really underutilize the whole mechanical aspect. I like to keep it very traditionally fantasy, and usually magic is the reasoning for things. But introducing a mechanical thing such as like a flying machine, which would be pretty important for a lower level party as like a plot hook.
Well, it's
That-
something that I always enjoy, that I think really, like you said, it's not something that's too common, or if anything, it goes too much in the other direction of something, let's say like Eberron, where everything's steampunk. So it's
Mhm.
like there's robots and everything. It's more along the lines of, I like the idea of something where there's just enough mechanical fantasy, to put it one way, where it's things that people are going to be looking for and seeking and things like that, but at the same time, it's still grounded enough that it's the whole world. Like it is something of importance. That it's the whole world. Like it is something
Yeah.
of importance.
Yeah.
So it's like, like I said, if in a world where people can fly, there might be giant birds and other things like that. The idea that somebody built a flying machine, even if it's just like a hot air balloon, it's just figuring out how to do that, purely without resorting to magic, so that it's not subjected to, let's say, being I mean, granted, like somebody can still fire a magic missile at it and it kind of
Of
goes
course, yeah,
kaput.
and it just
Yeah.
popped.
But if you
But
build like if you build the D&D equivalent of an airplane, and something where if there's a like here's a great example. Okay, I just thought of something that could be fantastic for a, let's say, a beginner's campaign, and something to kind of work out. Let's say the group of adventurers are working for another faction, or a more powerful adventurer, like a hero or something like that,
mhm.
and there's a big bad villain or something along those natures where they need to get to, that's in an anti-magical field, on some kind of floating platform or something like that, or it's like a tower city, like it's suspended on a giant spire that's
Somewhere they
surrounded
can't
by
reach.
somewhere that's
Yeah.
not easy to reach, and if they try to get in there, like anything that's magical, it hits the anti-magic bubble and just
It
pops.
pops. Yeah. Okay.
So what if there's legend of something that like a giant mechanical bird, and what it turns out to be is just they just find an old airplane hangar, and the whole point of this little, maybe first couple of adventures or first couple of sessions, is just you're looking for this object, and securing it might only be part of it. Once you find where it is, then you have to find somebody who can help you build it. Then you have to be able to find somebody who can help you to get it restored. And then it's like, all right, well, now you have to give it to the guy who asked you to find it, but maybe something happens to them. That's like, well,
Mm.
shoot, now that this guy's not around, we got to do something. Maybe we go on this adventure, or like we take the contract.
Yeah, for
It could
sure.
be something like, as they level up and get higher in level, well, like, yeah, like we did all the legwork and whatnot. Like, why don't we step up and try to see if this is something that we could do.
I could,
It was interesting when you mentioned airplane hangar. The immediate thought that popped into my mind was this feels very post-apocalyptic. Usually, with the introduction of
yeah.
magic, this feels like a world after a world that currently had this sort of technology. Although that could totally not be the case. It could just be a standard building with maybe a wooden or linen flapping device that's considered an airplane of some sort.
I,
But
well, I mean, like I said, I guess part of it boils down to how. Um, well, I mean, it's a fun twist, but I don't even think you necessarily even need to go there. It could be something along those lines of this might be kind of goofy, but think of something like either ancient Egypt or like a lot of ancient societies where half the stuff that they did and accomplished, people still don't know how they pulled it off.
yeah,
Like
like
this talks about like
pyramids.
these guys figured out electricity, but they did it without wires, or they did it without like a lot of the same stuff that we would usually would think of, or the fact that they still don't know how they built the pyramids. And it's
Mhm.
not necessarily aliens. It'd be cool if it was, but it's most likely at least a good 60% chance that it was not aliens. But the fact of like like you find this um you find this factory or this plant, and maybe it's full of like these automatons. Like you stumble into it, and maybe like there's an NPC who's trying to keep it in running, but the problem is all the robots that were there. Um, like okay, so let's keep going off of that. So I think we have an idea. We have
Okay.
the
Yeah.
legend itself is the flying machine, because legends don't necessarily need to be fantastical. It's just it's a legend is basically a story. It's lore. It's something that gets passed down, from time to time. By the way, Kevin, you have a bunch of people kind of throwing out some shout outs in the chat. I don't know if
You're
you're
right.
watching that or not.
That's my paladin, but
Awesome.
my
Oh,
knight in shining armor. Um, Caniform,
Mhm.
Caleb. He's totally right with the whole Da Vinci flying machine. That could be another design choice for
Yeah.
our mythical flying machine here. Although I also really like the idea with the machine itself does look like a physical bird,
Yeah,
which
I mean,
could
it could work. Well, 'cause think about it. If it's a fantasy setting, so they probably like when they would start to develop they would most likely look for things that already like okay,
already
like
fly.
right.
Yeah,
But it's a matter of like, but the problem is that they don't understand how they fly. So they start with the shape and then try to figure out like work backwards from there. And they might end up making it like very inefficient to the point where like, all right, the fact that it actually works is a miracle, but it's still more along the lines of like, okay, like, how do we keep this thing from not crashing, rather opposed to like, oh well, you guys know, like it doesn't have to actually flap its wings, like that's kind of unnecessary for what the bird does. It's like the amount of like lift it would require. Um, so instead, it's like, oh, like it would actually could be keeping this thing elevated. Could be, I don't know, it could be helium balloons, or could be like they actually create thrust like turbines. They don't realize that that's actually, if anything, like the wings could be just an unnecessary element that they don't realize doesn't actually do as much as the fact that they created jet propulsion without realizing it.
it could be a glider. They could just
Yeah, it
bring
could
a
be a glider.
yeah.
Could
high
perfectly.
part
Yeah, it
and
could
jump
perfectly be
down.
just fine. It's less than an airplane and more of just a hang glider. Um, so okay, so yeah, so the legend itself is this flying device. It could even be something along the lines of like a mechanical bird. Like there's talks of this ancient metal bird that would be perfect for something like that. Oh
Hmm.
yeah, somebody in the chat just said it could even be based on a dragon. The basis of it could be a real flying
Oh yeah.
animal like a bird or a fantasy flying creature.
Or
Um,
I was just or like a griffin, or any type of mythical bird.
You
yeah,
got
I mean,
a lot of things in D&D can fly.
Yeah.
You got
but
the
even but
griffin, the
even even if
hippogriff.
you do something of, let's say, like I said, like if you take it to like another genre, like if you do something like, it doesn't necessarily work with high tech fantasy, but I mean, you could spin it. All you have to do is just make it go to space instead of just being ground based. So it's like, oh, it's a place where they have, spaceships as opposed to whatever. So like, you might have to tweak it a little bit, but we could keep it on like a D and D format just for simplicity's sake.
Sure.
So, all right, so
Yeah.
you have the flying thing, and then the building or location is this hangar or factory. It's a place where they know that this thing exists, or then maybe even that they don't know, they have an idea that that's where it is. But then the question is, how do they hear about it? Do they read about it in a book? Do they find it like we have an NPC? Is it that do we want to make the NPC somebody who knows where it's located, so they have to take them there? Is the NPC someone who, let's say, is in the place and again is trying to like maintain it, but there's all these low level robots just kind of running around amok?
Hmm.
I I always love the idea of like a living robotic city. I've done it on a lot of my campaigns just because I just like the idea so much. And I mean, you can even do it low level games, clockwork people or just clockwork creatures, you know, and it doesn't even necessarily need to be specifically like Warforged or things like that. Just say it's just a bunch of metal people,
Yeah.
or it could be. There was this one idea I had of it was like a Geppetto kind of thing of like this guy had a kid who was sick, so he built like this almost like a toy village of like everything in the village was all toys, like but they were moved around and did their thing, but it was all like a Disney attraction, you know.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
so something like that of like, all right, you have these things that like could be going through the motions of what they would think that they're supposed to do, but the people who would be giving them orders or the people, oh, I had a great idea. So what if the person who let's say this NPC, what if there's somebody who's maintaining the place, but the problem is that because everybody else around there maybe had a horrible accident or died or just left, they never got promoted enough to the point where the other things inside the factory will like recognize their authority. So you might have this like gnome or dwarf or elf or just anybody who lives or even like a sentient, like it could be somebody who is aware, but the problem is because they're so low on the totem pole, they're trying to give orders to all these other mechanical things and they're just not listening. Even though
All
they're
right.
doing things that are counterproductive and unhelpful, they legit don't know enough not to do it, and they are just kind of like ignored. So like it could be, oh well, maybe the party figures out like, well, maybe we have to partner with this person to actually get what we want, or how do we get this person promoted? Maybe we can figure out some way to do that. Like there's a couple of fun ways you can do it depending on.
Get this guy promoted. I actually really like
Yeah,
that
I,
idea.
I like that too.
That brings it
Um,
to a very goofy turn, which I love that.
Oh, it's great. Like I said, it
yeah.
could be like and it could be somebody who's huge, and because that's the other great thing. So we kind of briefly touched upon it, and looping it back around to making your first campaign. The best thing that I would come up with is number one, come up with a core idea, and then have things that can kind of branch off of it. Like have something where okay, the end goal is let's say floating bad guy city. Like okay, there is either a city full of treasure, but the problem is it's surrounded this anti-magic field, or there's this villain who has this wicked sword, and like I said, the party is hired not to go deal with it because they're too low on the ladder. That also could kind of go off of the idea of promotion. You can make that like a backbone of the campaign, but it's like okay, like the party is just tasked with helping this other person do what they need to do, and then as a result, like you almost frame it like a video game. Like a lot of times when I make a campaign, that's how I kind of start with the train of thought. Is like I'm making a video game. I have like a general idea of where I want it to go. How do I develop stages or levels for each segment of it? So
Hmm.
the first part of it would be okay, like here's where the party wants to go first, and here's what they do. But when you're building a campaign, that core idea, like that train of thought, I think is much more important than building your own world, coming up with all these different cities and things like that. Because then really all you need to do is just flesh out like a small handful of them. And even if the party, if you make a map, and if the party doesn't go where you want to go, you don't necessarily need to tell them in advance. Like there's a couple of ways you can kind of play around that. Like you could have it where, well, there's a couple of people who have maps, but everybody has maps that contradict the other person, or you have like these territorial lines that have been constantly eroded and drawn over time or whatever. But one of the great ways to really make a memorable campaign is fun and interesting NPCs, like things that people are going to want to latch on to. So if you have something where, like I said, you have this NPC who the first thing is like, you're not trying to help avenge their parents, or, you're not trying to help them, topple this monster that they've been hunting or whatever. No, you're just trying to help them get better at their job or get promoted so that they can actually get things accomplished. And that's stuff that could actually pay off later. So maybe they help them with the glider, and maybe that person comes back. Like, yeah, now that the factory is back up and operational, like, we're actually manufacturing things. So I'm now free to go as a merchant, or I've hired these other people. Like, that's a fun way to start. And then, like, you could even have it where, the factory, or the hangar, or whatever you want to call it, is a place where they go to multiple times, or you could build more NPCs off of it, whereas, like, all right, like, let's maybe literally build NPCs to do what we'd like them to do, and kind of see how that goes. I know that I've been kind of going off for a while, so like I want to give you guys a chance to maybe jump in. Would any of you guys want to maybe build off on what we've been kind of putting together so far? Any of you guys have your own thoughts?
I actually have a thought about. So we're having this flying machine.
Yes.
Well, I'm thinking maybe have the NPC being like a bookshop owner, and in one of the books is a legend about an old technology of a glider type, and it's deep in the woods, and the party has to go fight through the woods and battle, whatever, to get to the hangar where the glider is.
Or it could even be something like a picture or like a poster.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
maybe like you're in a bookshop,
like
and
if
like
you open like a picture, like the book, and there's like an old drawer, like a picture drawing of what the glider looks like. So
That could definitely work.
that'd be a
It's like
really
a
fun way
picture
to do it.
poster.
Of like, they go to a bookshop looking for information for how they can maybe get through the bubble, or find ways to kind of get through it. And in the process of going into the bookstore, like there's this big giant mural of this metal bird, and it's like, well, what's up with that? It's like, that's nothing. That's just some talk, for some
folk tale,
A
like
gnomes.
myth.
something, yeah.
And then like it
I
could be
like
one of those
that.
things of like, that's the springboard for, okay, well, where did this poster come from? Somebody had to know about it. So all right, well, it came from the gnomes. The gnomes are like their own settlement, or they're out of town, or whatever. It even could be that like they're like, it could be that like maybe even like there's other people who disagreed with the design notes, so they've been kind of like trying to go back to the drawing board and make their own version of it, but they
That could be
don't
one too.
understand, or they're flawed. So as a result, like they don't think it's possible, or they think there's another way to do it, not realizing that, well, no, it's there, it's already exists. You just are too stubborn to just actually like, look
Take the
into it
time
and
to
make
look
sure,
over
right?
it and try and
Or to not be like, no, no,
patient.
no, like if there's no way it would work. Like you have to flap the wings. Like that's
Yeah.
So when you immediately say that there's numerous people or groups or affiliations trying to figure out how to get this bird to work because they heard of this bird that does work,
mhm.
and then they look at the photo or the mural or the poster or whatever it is, and then they go back to their representative workshops and their families and they try and test it out themselves. That immediately, at least to me, it sounds like one, two, or maybe even three different clans or little groups of gnomes, rock gnomes, which, oh, that's my bad, just gnomes in general
That's fun.
would it seems like they'd be kind of doing like a little feud of different families to figure out who could get this bird working first.
Man,
Kind of like a
if you want to go real fun, so like I don't. The one thing I try to avoid with D&D is sticking to the books too much, only
Mm-hmm.
because like I like kind of going really out there with crazy concepts and things like that. What if you have a tribe of kobolds who are trying to figure this stuff out? And it could be
That would
like
also work. That
like
would
it could be
totally
like, no, 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 it wasn't a bird, it was a dragon. Like they have their own mural of it because they had like a
I love that.
like a
I
That's
like
like
a
that.
like a
I
bunch of
like that.
like a bunch of like menial like labor guys who are like, no, 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 like it's a dragon. Like so they go do their own thing, and like they could be a little bit antagonistic, but they don't have to be like
no, of course
terrorizing
not.
other
No.
places. It could be like, again, like think of it like like a game. So it's like and that's not to say like, oh, you can't have combat, or you can't have like challenging like encounters. Like it could, maybe there is like a big bad kobold who I mean to keep saying big bad, but maybe you have a ringleader who's like, no, like, we're gonna figure this flying thing out, and then we're gonna, take over the whole place or whatever, But it's like you could stumble upon like 4 or 5 of the like these little latchkey guys, and again, like part of the campaign could be helping them to rise up in the ranks so that they can overthrow this jerk leader that they have. Like, like that's it's. I mean, it's not every campaign needs to have a theme, like a concurrent theme throughout the whole thing. But if you're, if you really like that, or if you want to, give yourself some plenty of places where you can kind of work off of, it's a neat thing you can just latch into and figure out how can I come up with different aspects or angles for that. You don't have to do it every single place that they go, because that might get a little bit predictable or stale. But it's just a fun, neat thing you could do of like, all right, well, here's a good way to work with this group. Here's a great way to work with this individual. It could be that maybe there's a rival group that has like a vizier or a politician who's trying to get the flying thing so that they can get into the city so that they can, elevate themselves. Like, oh, if I you get this powerful relic, I can overthrow the king or whatever, or.
So I actually just thought of something to play off of what you just said, John. What if there's a mythical group that was entrusted to guard this glider or this plane, this bird-like structure?
So the bird's already made, and there's this mythical group.
Yeah.
You don't know wherever it is. They're the ones that are there to guard
They're
it.
the ones that are guarding. They're the ones that are guarding it, and then all these other kobolds, goblins. I'm just ogres. I'm trying to think of something else.
I got an idea, if you don't mind me interjecting.
Yeah.
Go the opposite way. What if it's a group that has like magical flying capabilities that doesn't want non-magical individuals to know that something like that exists?
That does give the campaign a clear antagonist to fight against, which would help.
I think we're good with Zoom-wise, by the way, because I just got a notification saying that they removed the 40-minute limit, so we don't have to worry about.
I just got that too.
Yeah, we don't have to worry about any of that. I'm guessing with everything that's going on, they might be a little lax with that. So we don't have to worry about the stream cutting out on this in the middle of things.
Gotcha.
I actually think it's because we only have 3, and I think that's why. So
I think it's a little bit both, yeah. But no, I like that of like this antagonistic group that like doesn't want people who don't have access to magic to not realize that that there is such a thing is possible. So like they're looking for it, or they're purposely keeping the place guarded. Like maybe it's like maybe like they can't get into it themselves.
But they know where it is.
Like they know where it is. So it's like, all right, look, like if we try to go in there, all those robots will just keep attacking us, and it's very well fortified and guarded, or it's just so lost in there that because it's not magic, so we can't use detect magic. We can't we could use spells to try to with light and stuff like that, but it's literally like looking for a needle in a haystack. So rather than trying to go through all that nonsense, let's just keep people from coming here who might be more patient to just kind of look for it. And at the same time, like maybe they have their own, flying services of like, oh, we have like these, magical celestial birds that we conjure, or we have these things that we like these like boats that we just elevate with magic, like the way Spelljammer works.
So it's kind of like they're trying to create a monopoly or like a cornerstone on this whole transportation. That's not a cart or a wagon or a boat.
Well, anything that requires flying, because think in D&D, not like having access to flight is huge.
It is.
That's why, like at first level, you usually don't have a dragon. Well, I mean, it's huge if you have a lot of space to cover. My thing is when you're doing a campaign, you never want to require that somebody gets somewhere that they don't have a reasonable way of getting there, or at least not without it being like the destination is the purpose of it. So it's like if you're like, all right, like you need to get to an island, you don't want to have a campaign where boats don't exist.
You should always have like some sort of harbor.
Right,
or
or
Yeah.
something of like, all right, well, like,
teleportation
right,
circle or
like,
something like that.
or even if boats are scarce, then that's the point. Like, all right, we need to get a way to get onto a boat, either by
Go
Or
stealing
find a
it,
boat.
even
finding
You know,
one,
or
getting it
even
over
like use
through.
blimps if you don't want to have boats. If you want to have use like hot air blimps.
that's also implying that there's flying in that specific setting, which
Yeah.
also
Yeah.
totally works.
So the point is like, yeah, you could have this group, this NPC association that is this. All right, so I actually have to start making some of these notes on the development thing. So we have so the legend is so I'm gonna just say legends slash lore. The great metal bird. You know,
Sure, 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 sure.
no, I don't necessarily want to say bird. We'll just say the great. Um, uh,
Flying creature.
The
yeah,
great flying, yeah, flying creature, flying machine, the great
Flying
metal.
machine.
Oh,
Yeah.
the great flying steel.
sure, that
The
works.
Yes.
mechanical
I
thing.
like that.
It's a legend about a flying contraption in the shape of a
Of a bird.
creature.
Of a,
Little is known about its whereabouts and how it operates. It is fiercely sought after. Um, Many attempts to mimic slash duplicate, and I'll just say in quotes, certain individuals would like to keep it hidden. And
And then
then
spread
yeah.
rumors later.
buildings and structures it's the factory slash plant where the contraption is stored and or built. Like that's another thing too. Like what if you go there and like there's dozens of these
Massive.
things?
There's
Like
like
Yeah,
right,
they're just
yeah.
stored away, gathering dust.
guarded by animated constructs slash mechanical workers slash living robots. And then as for NPCs, you have a lot of options. The NPCs could be factory
Are we limited
worker.
to one? Can we have
Oh
multiple?
yeah, no, you. I mean, you
I
could like.
think we should have
It's
multiple,
the idea.
definitely.
The idea, like I said, the idea is having like something you can connect it to. It's really all just for brainstorming. So I mean,
Hmm.
you could do all that stuff. Like, because I really like the idea of a factory worker who knows the history, but cannot get the other
I got an idea.
mechanical workers to obey them.
The
I
f-
also like the idea of the faction of magical flyers keeping the technology hidden. I also like the rival tribes of aeronauts trying to perfect their version
Aeronauts. I like
their
that.
version of the creature.
what
With the
if
whole, oh my bad, you
go
continue.
go go
Right.
Kevin go.
I was gonna mention the whole when you originally said that there were different views on how this thing looked or how it behaved, and different people tried creating it. I thought that would be a perfect idea to introduce the option of choice to your players. Like, just for an example, you go talk to a gnome who says it was a big bird, and then you go talk to a kobold who says no, it's a big dragon. Well, then it depends, who do you want to
Yeah.
go help figure that out? And then you go with that certain person, and that could provide different benefits compared to whoever you decide to choose. And I feel like that element of choice is something that's very important, that you can introduce early on to your group if this is a brand new campaign with a new plot hook and everything. So your players get used to the idea of having options, so they don't sit around the wait to have that given to them.
Right. Or it's a matter of like it's also not like no red herrings. Like the thing I think that can string up a lot of role playing games and stuff in general is you don't want to have just dead ends where it's like you don't know until you're there of like, oh, like, well, you're looking for something, so
Yeah,
I go there, but it's
all
like
threads lead back to
The one.
one certain thing. Yeah.
there was
Well,
a friend of mine who, when I was working on campaign stuff, he gave me a really great idea. He gave me a really great concept. He might have even borrowed it from somewhere else, but he called it the funnel method. And he said that like when you look at the funnel, you have like like I don't really have a funnel, but think of like this cup that I have.
Sure.
So it's like, all right, the end of the cup is where ultimately everything kind of empties out into. So at the end of the day, it's like it all ends to the end point. But because it's so wide at the mouth of it, there's a bunch of different ways where you can go, just as long as the destination is where you want it to be. So it's like, all right,
okay.
if the ultimate end goal isn't even necessarily the flying thing itself, it all just comes down to we are just trying to get to that like floating city or that
With
tower
the
that's protected by
anti-magic
the
field
magic
on it,
city
yeah.
or that
Yeah.
tower that, like all we
What
wanted.
I was gonna. Oh, sorry, John.
No, go ahead, go ahead. All we wanted.
What I was gonna say,
Oh, sorry,
say
no,
if
no, go ahead, go ahead. All we
this
wanted.
guy that's this NPC, what happens if his father or grandfather helped build this flying thing, and his family has just lived on that site for years, and he's just a low level,
He just
and
doesn't realize or is unaware.
he's doesn't realize or unaware that his family actually built it.
That's not a bad idea. Well, that's the
work.
thing about these ideas is that like there's a lot of different ways you can take inspiration from. So that's something
Yeah.
like you have this, could be that they're jaded, or it could be that they were searching for it and just couldn't find it, and then
They could have been too young to remember it even being built.
Yeah.
right. Or you could even do like a Goonies of like they're on top of it, they don't know where it is, and then when they find out about it, they want it for themselves. So now it's like, and again, not villainous, but like, oh, if I take this thing, I could I could reverse engineer it, or I could sell it. So like, no, I'm gonna get this thing for my own purpose, and then this NPC goes and does their own thing to try to get the thing. Um, because like I said, I think all points lead to finding finding a way to fly. Like I think that's the
Yeah.
end goal, is that the legend itself is all to finding a non-magical way to fly. How you get there, whether it's that the plans have kind of like maybe with the kobolds, like yeah, like look, we have some ideas, but it's missing, and then maybe they have like some documents, and then through reading the documents, like well actually some of it's in Gnomish, and when you read it in Gnomish, it kind of leads you to this region, or it leads you to this town, or there's a name that one of you might have even have heard about, and it's like well yeah, there's
Okay.
this Gnomish inventor. So like maybe the kobolds, like if you want to go that route, it's like, or doesn't need to be kobolds. It could be could be gnomes, could be another just monstrous creature or whatever. It could be anything. But it's like they have a piece of the puzzle. They just don't realize that it's incomplete. They just can't figure it out. They just think, well, maybe we're not, put more wings on it. So you have this thing that
Yeah.
has like
Yeah.
More
15
wings means it'll fly better.
right.
More
But
wings, but if you're going that, well, who's going to control the extra set?
right.
Well, now
What's
you
going
just
to?
need more people on it,
Oh yeah.
obviously.
Oh,
Well,
you know what a great thing to do is like so they have like they have like a page, and it has like a rough outline of this thing. But like if you could be like and you could even do this in advance. Like if you're running this for a group, just find out in advance what languages they speak.
Mhm.
So this way, like if you have all humans, like does any of them know an additional language, or if you have like elves or dwarves or whatever. And then what you do is when they're looking at the plan that they have, there's this thing that you see in like dwarvish or gnomish or whatever, and it's like page 3,
It's like
like
page three. Uh-oh.
page 3. It's like yeah, wait, hold on, like
Page 3, I only got one. Yeah.
yeah, that's when you realize like wait, this is page 3, like where's 1 and 2, and is there more? And then it's like, well, where'd you guys find this? It's like, oh, like we it came into our possession or whatever. And then like I said, like and it could be like either you leave the kobolds alone, or maybe you take one of them with you. So like again, it depends on how much. Like the problem with NPCs is that NPCs are useful, but you have to watch out for babysitting. Like the thing is that you don't want to have an NPC well, okay, let me rephrase that. You don't want to have an NPC who is so vital to the plot that if anything happens to them, that the entire campaign will fall apart. Or that
Very
you need,
true.
or that you
Yeah.
end up putting somebody in so much risk that it's like, or even like doing something that wouldn't make sense. Like I don't know if a kobold is going to be like, well, yeah, I'll just go with you random strangers who are not kobolds, who
No,
are not
yeah.
my boss.
no,
They're
no.
like,
It
So it's like,
sounds kind of mean, but your NPCs should be created where they're kind of indispensable, or if one of them dies, unfortunately, there's still another way to continue on with the story.
it's like
Yeah.
yeah,
Either
like
by
you don't want to
Like,
you don't
or
want to.
they have a partner or something. Like they have a partner, so if they die, their partner can then take over, or if they have like a whole army that can take over.
I think it's more along the lines of you want to have an NPC who is not indispensable, but is also not forgettable. And there's a
Oh,
lot
of
of
course.
ways you can do that. Like I said, it could be like, oh, you meet with this NPC and you get the idea of like what they need, where you need to go, how you need to help them out, and what you end up doing is okay. You're like, yeah, you wait here. I'll go do what I need to do, and then I'll come back so you're not at risk. Or if I take you with us, like they don't get anywhere near the front of combat. If they do get attacked, it could very easily be like you get attacked by a bunch of ogres, and like the kobold's like whacking one of them with a stick, and you just see the ogre just pick him up by the head and just tosses him. So then like, all right, like we have to find where he went. Like instead of just being that mean thing of like, hey, the ogre just goes whack, and like, all right, great, now the NPC has,
Oh yeah, well,
well
one hit
he's
kills him
there
Yeah.
and there and there and there.
Yeah, that's never fun though. Having an
No.
instant, it's definitely you should give your players the
It's
option to bring them back
if you want it, well,
or
if you're gonna do
save
something
them.
like that, it has to be someone who is gonna be really memorable if they manage to pull through. But again, it's not vital. Like it could be, okay, let's say continuing what we've been building on so far. Okay, you find out through the kobolds, let's say, using that train of thought, you find out through the kobolds that there is a gnome inventor who had the plans, or had maybe parts of the plans, or something like that. That's how you could also make it a MacGuffin thing. It's like, oh, we have to find all the different plane pieces or whatever. He's like, okay, look. The gnome is like, me and a bunch of my guys, like, we have been trying to get these pages back from this monster that we tricked or whatever, and it could be like an intelligent monster, like it could be like an ogre, or it could be like an orc or something like that. So it's like, okay, like I'm gonna go in, but I'm gonna bring my assistants. So like that NPC, they might not do anything that puts themselves into danger, but those assistants, you can give them like fun, goofy names and make them a little bit memorable. So it's like, oh no, not Lefty. He always did everything with his right hand. That's why it was so funny.
Like that guy. No, that's
Uh,
definitely true. I think keeping that little flair of comedy in it will definitely make things a little lighthearted, especially if you're
and
on
it's
an
and
adventure
you could do
looking
something
for a
really
flying
stupid,
machine.
like just okay, well, like this is Eagle Eyes, and Eagle Eyes is just a gnome who's got two different eye patches.
Two eye
on both
patches,
eyes.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like literally, it's like, oh well, like it's gonna be a shame if Eagle Eyes bites it, but I mean, because ultimately, like even in the gnomes surviving is not the point. Like you just need the pages. You also don't want to have it where the party's like just gonna toss them in first sign of danger. But it's like, all right, that's a fun way to mess around with that, and all you need to do is just be like, all right, they're just gonna be around, and every once in a while, I might make like a fun, goofy roll for something that might happen with them. But you don't want to have it where the dynamic of the group plus these NPCs is so lopsided that they're just going to also steamroll over everything.
Oh yeah.
Like
Yeah.
the way you try to do that is that you make the challenge high enough that's like, all right, look, you cannot directly engage. Nobody's gonna. It doesn't matter. Like if there's 8 of you, it's still not gonna work out super good. So you need to try to do distractions or sneaking around or subterfuge. Anything you can think of that's gonna allow you to accomplish what you want.
That's another good way of introducing new ways of playing because
Yeah.
again this is a story for assuming we're going to have it's a new party, low level, new campaign. It's introducing that there's more than one different way to encounter a problem than just run up to it and beat it down with your sword, which
Right.
I'm all in favor for stuff like that.
What if you have a newer party that just got together, but you as the DM know that they're all veteran players?
I mean, that's a little bit different because
But
it's
like
the
I'm saying,
knowledge.
would you then throw like say, oh, would you throw more harder stuff at them, or would you then tone
I,
it down? That's the thing.
I think that's on a personal basis level, like DM per DM, it's going to be slightly different.
Right,
Okay.
because I think it's at the
But
same time, like,
yeah,
I mean, you might have an expectation of like, hey, if I give you guys are all experienced, or if you guys know what you're doing, like, I'm not gonna say like, okay, level 1 guys, there's that black dragon, better go fight that thing. It's like that's
Yeah.
not gonna. But at the same time, it's like, all right, guys, there's a black dragon that's nearby. I'm going to assume that you guys aren't stupid enough to go poke it in the face with a stick. You know what I mean?
That's
So it's like,
exactly it. It's like
Yeah.
I get you guys are all veteran players. I've been playing with you guys for years or however long it's been. I'm going to give you a scenario which you can clearly see you're probably not going to win if you run straight first into it.
and
But
you can even make that a part of it. Like, hey, like, all right, you're looking for these plan pages. Like, you're looking for parts to help you to build this thing out. And one of the things could be like, yeah, it just so happened that it was, like one of the guys had it in his armor. Well, where is he? Well, a dragon ate him. It's like, okay, well, the dragon probably spit him up or whatever. So hopefully the stuff should still be protected in his armor. But you have to get to the dragon's like, lair, find the armor without waking the dragon, having it murdering you. And yeah, it's like, okay, you guys are not there to fight the dragon. Like, you guys are level 3.
yeah,
Like,
you're not
Yeah.
fighting anything of that caliber. You're just there to get it and leave.
and
Or-
it could be again, and it could be that some of the NPCs have ideas to help the party out. Like, you want to have like, hopefully, one of the things that can be difficult for a newer group, or if, like, depending, like I said, because a lot of times when you're running for people, it's like you're either running for people that you know personally. They might do D&D, but you at least might know how they think. Or it might be people that you're running for the first time, or you're running for experienced players. So you hopefully at least have an idea of what you're running with.
Mhm.
But if they're struggling to come up with ideas, or if it's not necessarily railroading, but you can toss options out there. Like, okay, like there's this dragon's lair. Like there's this dragon where, like, you know where the thing is located. You know that you need to try to track it down or whatever. So it's like, okay, how do we, get this thing? Well, what if the kobolds are like, well, what if we try to give it an offering? Because, like, kobolds.
That's how
In
kobolds
some D&D,
work,
like,
yeah.
yeah, that's a
Yeah.
kobolds. And granted, like, the dragon might even go for it, but it's like, yeah, you guys do that, and like while they're doing that, you go steal the thing. Like, they totally, like, try to go and, like, trick the dragon to, get the thing while you guys are actually, like, sneaking in. So, like, yeah, it's like Trojan horse shit. I do see that thing that popped up in the chat. Based on the idea of machines and family members, a duo set of characters, one brawler-like character with artificial limbs that they rely on, and an artificer who made said limbs and repairs them when needed. That is like full anime right there.
Yeah.
But that's cool though. Like,
that's definitely the over the top fantasy that
That's
happens a lot when you play these sorts of games. Which
But
I
that can
love throwing
totally
a little
work.
bit of
Like,
that in
that's
there
a
as well.
that's a neat thing, and that's something you can also work with your players. Like, hey, I want to be I want to be a fighter who's going to work. Like for example, Mike can attest to this. I gave Mike in the campaign I was running on Tuesdays a metal gauntlet because he was a half orc barbarian.
Yep. I chose the barbarian.
Okay.
And he found like this basically like a punch glove. It was like, it would go on like, basically like iron knuckles and a little brace at the palm. So what would happen is, like, if you need to hit something, like, it didn't have blades, it just would hit really hard. So, like, if you got, like, if you don't want to just do your unarmed attack, which is basically just, 1 plus
One
whatever
plus
your
your
strength is.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think
If we're going by
I think it was
5e.
relatively small, like a D6 or a D8 or something like that. I don't think it was anything too crazy.
For a melee weapon or like a fist weapon, D8 is pretty good.
Well,
I'll be
I,
honest.
I think I was actually using a D4. If I
would have
remember.
expected for it.
Well,
I-
D4, D6, but like, but
I think it was a D4.
That's like tavern brawler feat.
It was like some sort of, when I very rarely used it because I always had like an axe, like a great axe or a sword
it was
on
basically
me.
just a backup of like, hey, if
Yeah, it was
I
just
get
a backup.
disarmed, and that could totally work. Like, yeah, you have this guy who has, like, he has mechanical arms, so it's like, all right, like, he has these weapons, he still can use weapons.
And you gave
But
something
if
like that.
D&D, like, basically goes, punch mode, and it's like, all right, you've got D4s, which is still better than like just a 1 plus your strength. But at least it's something to work off of. Or if you want to go monk variant, like if you
I
really
was going
want
to
to go
say that'd be a
crazy with
super interesting monk fighter.
Our actually cleric on when I was playing on Tuesday, our cleric had a retractable arm.
Oh, look at that.
Zeedle, Karen's character.
Right. I remember that. I mean, the only thing about that is, like, finding something that's. I mean, there's very easy ways to just make something that doesn't exist in the game, and that's find something that's not too crazy. Like again with the monk, it's like it's an explanation for how it would scale up. The only thing where it gets a little bit weird is when you start getting magical abilities, unless you
Yeah.
start like figuring out like it's just going to be augmentations. Like you just
You
find
mean
out like
like
more ways of like messing around like mechanic wise or whatever.
when you say magic abilities, are you referring to when it says that your fists count as magical damage for getting past magic resistance? Or
I meant more like the fact that like at higher levels, monks like start to be able to like teleport and warp around and stuff
right,
like
right, right,
that.
right. Okay.
So if you have somebody who's like part machine and like well now you could literally like phase through like dimensions and stuff like that, or all kinds of crazy nonsense. Like
At that level, I'd expect artificers to be able to come up with at least something to help their.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think an artificer should be able to come up with something to combat that. So
I like the idea more of going more mechanical. Like if we're really going off that original idea that kind of popped this whole thing off of like, somebody who has this mechanical outset of like, all right, this we're gonna figure out how to like really tweak like $6 million man you, without just pumping you full of magic. It probably requires a little bit more doing, but at the very least though, it's like I said, it's a cool character concept, and I'm sure there's probably builds out there, or you could like sit with a DM and figure out like what are some appropriate ways we can make this scale without just making it just stronger. Because even like with some characters, like they get bonuses to attacks, but it's not like the weapon that they have gets that much more powerful. It just gets
No,
more
it's
likely
the
to hit.
person.
No.
It's normally the person themselves. It's not
Right.
Yes.
This would be the opposite of like, all right, this person. Oh, but the scary thing about that is you have a mechanical person. Like, what do you do when you run into a rust monster?
Oh my goodness! Yeah,
Oh.
that's another thing. That'd be a great role play experience. It's my arms rusted off. We got to go find the 200 golds worth of materials to build me a new set of arms.
Or like,
Yeah.
oh no, like the door's closing on us. What do we do? Just I got it. Just jam your arm into the gears and like.
Well, I'll
like
make you a new one. We'll do this later.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Don't worry. Don't worry. Just
like,
give me
you have
500 gold. You're good.
you have like a backup. It's just like a glove on a broom. It's like I hate the backup. Yeah, I know you hate the backup. It was whatever.
Yeah, but come on, you just got to use it. Come on, you're down an arm.
Just
It's like always having that backup character just in case you get killed and you have that character that's right there. So
Backup arms.
yeah.
I think
Like
we got a little bit off topic from the original.
Yeah, but I mean, like, no, I think.
But I
a lot
think
of
it's the
things-
more than a mechanical theme. I think that's what we were getting at.
That's true.
And like I said, that's kind of one of the fun things of when you start brainstorming stuff. But I was going to say that, yeah, because we got about 5 minutes left, so to kind of start getting it back a little bit on track and to wrap it up. So I think we came up with some really good ideas. Like I really really like the the mechanical bird idea. I think that's a good low level adventure because it's like I said, it's you could very easily parse it out. Like you could say like, all right, the first campaign, if you're gonna look at it that way, like is okay. We want to find the bird, or whatever it is. So it's like, you know, the first session or two is discovering it, like finding out about it. And then the second and third one is, or the third and fourth one is like finding out where this thing is or finding more about it. And then fifth or sixth is like, okay, like
Getting there, yeah.
right, like or getting there or getting it or whatever. And then it caps off with either you build it yourself or you discover it or you find out about it, and then that then leads into okay, now we have this. Now what? And then that's when you come back around. It's like okay, like so the next leg of it is we have this thing now. Now what do we do with it? Like now we're gonna try to assault this place, or even before we do that, like all right, we have it, and then like what if it gets like you want to find like a good way to like figure out the next step of it. But again, and we've talked about stuff that gives us plenty of things to work off of, including buildings and structures. We talked about workshops, the factory, the hangar. So it's like either you have a bunch of like workshops where there's different groups of NPCs trying to build it, either successfully or unsuccessfully. You have rival factions who are either trying to outpace the other group into building it first, or are trying to keep anybody from constructing it. You have the
one where it's already built, except it's
Right.
guarded by some sort of antagonist.
But like just an opposing force, and again, it's like it's not even that they're villainous. It's just that they are just there to or even it could be a matter of like they don't flat out attack you, but they just go about their business, but their business is making like a mess or whatever. So it's like I said, there's plenty of ways you could just spin it depending on how, like I said, how you want to handle it, how you want to have your group kind of roll with things and whatnot. And then yeah, like I said, the fact that like a couple of the people in the chat like jumped on a lot of the ideas we talked about, that's I really like that a lot. So it just shows you that it's a neat idea. Um, so let's start wrapping up.
Sure.
I'm going to thank everybody for watching. Thank you so much for joining us. Again, please continue to check out all the stuff that Long Island Tabletop does. We'll be doing this Friday our basic D&D show.
Are we?
I believe so. We might have to. Well, at least we should. Like, we'll keep it
We
on
should. It is our day.
keep it on the Discord. Keep it on the Facebook.
Yeah.
In the
The
meantime,
Twitter.
I'm sorry?
Twitter. Don't forget the Twitter.
And the Twitter. Yep. We'll be back in 2 weeks, which would be
That'd be May
11th.
May 11th.
And the topic for that week would be flora and fauna. So
Oh, that's such a sweet topic.
Yeah, no, it's gonna be definitely a blast.
I might have to watch that.
You could go off on that one.
It's always like interesting because there's so many ways you can do with it. Like you can do plant life, you can do creatures. We even like one time we were talking about like biology and like germs. So there's a lot of really interesting ways you can go with that. But again, I've been John with Long Island Tabletop and Legendary Realms Games. I thank you all so much for joining us. I'd also like to thank Mike and Kevin for being a part of this episode, and hopefully they'll be back in future ones. And again, one last time, I'd like to thank everybody in the audience for watching and participating. Just with everything that's going on, it's a little bit hard, but at least there's still plenty of fun ways to do role playing in D&D and all that stuff online. So yeah, just continue to be safe, continue to get your game on, and again, thanks everyone so much for joining us, and we will see you in 2 weeks.
Thank you so much. Have a good one.
Thank you so much. Have a good night.